I wasn't dreaming. I drove through it. There were street signs, a bakery, traffic lights still working. I even bought gas. But the next morning, I couldn't find the road again.
Ass.
And no one believed Unsel ever existed. That man wasn't the first. But he was the first to say it out loud. In 1971, satellite photo captured something strange over the Arizona desert. A coiled network of faint roads spiraling into a central void. No official town was ever recorded there. No roads were planned in that region. Government dismissed it as a lens artifact. 2 months later, a truck driver swore he passed a wooden sign on a side road. Welcome to Unsel. He remembered it clearly. A quiet town, a worn-out gas station, a stone church, and a windowless motel. No friendly faces. No conversation. Only dim yellow streetlights cutting through a pale fog. The next day, when he tried to retrace his steps, the sign was gone. GPS led nowhere. Locals had never heard of Unsel, so he drew a map of what he'd seen from memory. 3 days later, someone mailed the same drawing back to him, with more streets added. Nearly 50 years later, in 2025, Marcel Rives, a city cartographer from Paris, received a locked parcel from an unknown sender. No return address, only a tag that read, "For the one who maps what was lost." Inside was a brittle scroll of aged parchment inked in red with streets curling into each other. Alongside it, a red pen, unlabeled and weightless. Marcel, half amused, drew a name onto the paper without thinking. Whitlock Avenue. 2 days later, while browsing a digital archive of old newspapers, he stumbled upon a classified ad in a 1983 local gazette. It read, "Mary's Oven, 44 Whitlock Avenue, Unsel Z." There was no town by that name, but the paper existed. The ad existed. The typeface matched. The file had been scanned decades ago. Marcel's hands trembled. He typed Unsel, Arizona into every known mapping tool. Nothing. But the document was real. It had a timestamp, a municipal stamp. No one could explain how. Marcel posted an article online. Cartography experiment. If I draw a town that doesn't exist, but documentation starts surfacing, what am I actually drawing? 12 hours later, he had 6 responses. A woman claimed she'd grown up in a town she could never locate again, and had always remembered the name Unsel. A man said his father disappeared in 2004 after driving into a neighborhood that wasn't there. His car was recovered. The driver was never found. A woman, blind since birth, sent Marcel a hand-drawn map, an eerily accurate match to the parchment in his possession. Then came a voice message from an untraceable number. The voice was old, raspy, and emotionless. "You're not drawing the town. You're remembering it. Unsel doesn't exist on Earth. It exists in collective recall, in the cracks where memory goes to rot. Every time someone tries to map it, it reforms. Not for the world, but for them. And a warning. If you draw too much, the town will start to remember you." Marcel didn't sleep for days, but he didn't throw the pen away. That night, he sat at his desk. A blank sheet before him. He didn't think. The pen moved. Curves emerged. Boulevards twisted into familiar shapes. They flowed toward a circle in the center of the page, a space with no name. And right then, in the low amber light, Marcel understood. The roads were no longer following his hand. They were drawing themselves, from a memory that wasn't his, but had been waiting for him all along. Marcel didn't tell anyone what he saw that night, simply placed the paper in a drawer, locked it, and tried to forget. But the next morning, there was another drawing on his desk. Not his same parchment, same red ink. A new street labeled Denton Row, at the bottom in small cursive script. Do you remember now? He lived alone. No visitors. No signs of break-in. The pen was still where he left it. For the next 4 days, it continued. Each morning, a new map. A new road. A new question written in red. What happened on Ashbury Lane? Why did you leave in 1986? Did you really forget her name? Marcel had never lived in Arizona. He was born in Nantes, raised in Paris. But the questions stirred something old and unexplainable. Like walking into a dream you haven't had yet, but already know the ending too. He began to see things. Storefront reflected in a cafe window, but only for a second. A church steeple rising from behind a train yard that hadn't been there the day before. A woman's voice, humming a lullaby on a street with no one around. He began to write everything down. At first it was just dates and questions. Then names. Then full conversations with people he didn't remember meeting, written in his own handwriting. And then he found the note, pinned inside his coat pocket, folded precisely into 4 corners. It read, "Stop trying to map it. You're already inside." He started recording himself during sleep. Each night. Static. Silence. Until minute 34, that's when he would speak. Not in French, not in English, but in something phonetic, consonant-heavy and slow, like dragging stone over concrete. He never remembered saying any of it. He took the recording to a linguist at the university. The man paled after 5 minutes and left the room. He never returned to his office. The department's website erased his faculty profile 2 days later. Marcel called a friend in digital forensics. They analyzed the audio. There was something under his voice, not background noise, not interference, a chorus, layered voices barely audible, saying the same phrase in reverse. "We do not forget our own." He stopped sleeping after that. On the 7th night, he opened his drawer and pulled out the original map. It had changed. The roads now had numbers, symbols, entire districts. Each corner labeled with initials he didn't recognize, except one. Emmer etched in faint pencil at the intersection of Whitlock Avenue and Granger Street. It wasn't his handwriting, but it was his name. Marcel Rives, and beside it, a date. 1978, the year before he was born. He called his mother. Carefully, calmly, he asked if she had ever been to the United States. She went silent, then said, "We stayed in a motel. There were no windows. You were still inside me, and I remember." A bell ringing. Marcel didn't mention a bell. He never had. He asked if she remembered the name of the town. There was a pause. "Then I don't think I was supposed to. I wrote it down once." "Would you believe me if I said it was Uncel?" Marcel hung up the phone. And that night, he drew again. Not because he wanted to, but because the pen moved on its own. When the lines stopped, a phrase had appeared in the center of the page. Written in the same red ink, "You are being remembered." Marcel didn't remember buying the key, yet when he reached into his jacket, there it was. A small brass thing, aged cool to the touch. Its ridges were sharp, fresh, but the tag attached to it had been worn by decades of time. Faded handwritten lettering read, "Room 6, Antler Motel, Uncel." He blinked. The name had begun showing up everywhere, in emails he never wrote, in weather reports he hadn't subscribed to. One time, in the reflection of a window backwards, as if the glass remembered more than he did. That morning, he took the train 2 hours north of Paris. There was no town there, just a field. And yet, as he stepped onto the dirt path, the clouds above him seemed to hold still, as if the sky itself waited. Then he saw it, the house. He was sure it hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. 2 stories, blue-gray siding. 1 shutter missing. The porch light was on, even though the house had no electricity poles. The front door creaked open before he touched it. Inside, it smelled of cedar and something else. Charcoal, ink, dust from books that no one had read in years. Every room was arranged as if someone had just stepped out. A chair pushed back, a kettle warm, and on the wall above the fireplace, a framed photo of Marcel, not now, but as a child. 5, maybe 6 years old, holding hands with a woman whose face had been scorched black, not burned, exactly, but as if her image had never resolved in the film. She stood beside him, head slightly turned, arm around his shoulder. And beneath the photo, a label etched in brass. Room 6. Checkout delayed. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text. "You've come home late. You've been keeping it exactly as you left it." In the corner of the living room, a door had appeared. It hadn't been there when he entered. But now, it stood wide open, and behind it, a corridor of rooms, lined with red doors. Each door bore a number, Roman numerals fading from the wood. He walked past I-23, stopping at Vi. His name was carved into the wood, not printed, not painted, etched. He turned the knob. The room smelled like his old apartment in Nantes, where he had and T lived for over 15 years. The same bookshelf, same coffee mug, a notepad on the desk filled with his handwriting. Remember to forget, otherwise it follows. He sat down. For a long moment he believed it. That maybe all of this had a logical explanation. A prank. A fever. A hallucination brought on by insomnia and too many years of staring at maps. Then the notepad flipped a page. On its own. And there in red ink. We've mapped your forgetting. Now we'll build your remembering. Behind him, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Not heavy, not human. Rhythmic. Click. Pause. Pause. As if whatever moved did not walk, but adjusted itself as it remembered how legs were supposed to work. He didn't look. Closed the notepad. He stood up. The hallway had no lights now, only black. But from the far end, something shimmered. A piece of paper pinned to the last door. He walked to it. It was a page torn from a census. Said population. One name. Marcel Rives. Status. Checked in. He tried to run, but there were no windows in the house, no doors, only room vi. And the longer he stayed, the more it felt like the room wasn't keeping him in. It was keeping something else out. The room didn't have windows, but it did have stairs. He hadn't noticed them before. They ran beneath the floorboards, downward into a space that should not have fit beneath a house that size. As Marcel descended, the wood turned to stone. And then the stone turned to something else. Not metal, not brick. Something that felt old and wet and unfinished. Like a building still being remembered into existence. The walls bore names. Some carved, some painted over again and again, like someone had been trying to forget them for centuries. At the bottom of the stairs, the hallway opened into a chamber. It wasn't a basement. It was a vault. Lined with shelves, files, typewritten folders stacked in endless rows, and every one of them bore the same label. Deferred citizenship, unsell. He pulled the nearest one. Inside, Polaroids, handwritten letters, postcards that had never been sent. Fragments of people's lives, school transcripts, diary pages, prescriptions. One folder contained a dried daisy pressed between two receipts from a diner called Les CS, a town Marcel had never heard of, until he saw the photo. It was him, someone who looked like him. Sitting in a booth, a waitress pouring coffee. His hand held someone else's, but the other figure was blurred. A scribble covered her face, as if memory itself had redacted her. The back of the photo read, "Don't let her vanish again." Marcel stepped deeper into the archive. Some folders had dates reaching back to the 1800s, others not yet reached. Future dates: 2037, 2081. One was labeled Im. Rives, amendment pending. Inside a copy of his birth certificate, but the location had changed, not Nantes. Now it read, unsell. The text beneath said, subject, residual recall, drafted as witness class contributor, status, unstable memory anchor. He dropped the folder. Behind him something shifted, not sound, but weight, like gravity adjusting. Like the world around him had just remembered one more thing it wasn't supposed to. He turned. A door now stood where there hadn't been one. It bore a single word, etched in reverse. Exit. He reached for the handle, but it didn't turn. It wasn't locked. It was waiting. A voice whispered. Not from behind, but from inside his left ear. If you leave now, you won't know what's been removed. He backed away. The files fluttered on their own. Pages flipped. Polaroids fell from shelves like someone rifling through a memory and fast forward. Then the room went still, and all the folders had been rearranged. Only one remained on the center table, unmapped consequences. He opened it. Inside were 5 photographs, all of people he'd never met. Each photo had an X marked through the center, except for one. A man in his 30s, pale, thin, eyes sunken, but aware. The note beneath read, last known witness to escape unsell. Name Elijah Thorne. Location, unknown. And scribbled in the margin, he remembers how to forget. Marcel took the photo, slipped it into his coat. The moment he did, the vault began to shake. Not violently, but rhythmically, like it was breathing. The door that once said exit now said, remembrance request denied. And below that, you are being indexed. He ran. He didn't remember the stairs being that long. When he finally emerged back into the house, the light had changed. It was no longer morning. It was no longer any time at all. The sun was frozen in the sky, mid-rise, motionless, like a painting pinned above the clouds. He stepped outside. The neighborhood had grown. More houses, more windows, more chimneys puffing silent smoke into a windless sky. People stood at doorways, still unmoving, watching. Every one of them held something in their hands. Maps, pens, photos of people they no longer recognized. And each of them mouthed the same word as Marcel passed: anchor. Marcel had only one name: Elijah Thorne. He didn't know where to start looking, but the map did. That night, a new road appeared, not on paper, but carved into the palm of his left hand. Red, like ink, or something older, it led him west, through buildings that hadn't existed the day before, through alleyways where people whispered in languages he knew only in dreams, past a library with no door, only a spiral staircase that descended into gravel. Then, at the edge of Uncel, where the grid of streets gave up, and memory thinned like fog, he saw a man, sitting on a bench, eyes shut, mouth moving as if reciting a prayer only he could hear. Marcel approached. "Are you Elijah?" The man opened one eye. "You shouldn't have remembered me." His voice was tired, heavy with syllables that wanted to vanish. "I didn't choose to," Marcel said. "No one does," Elijah replied. "Not really." They sat in silence. Round them, Uncel pulsed. Not with sound, but with pressure, like the whole town breathed in slow unison. "I was 11 when I left," Elijah said. "They let me go because I stopped drawing." "But I saw your picture," Marcel whispered. "You're the last to leave." Elijah nodded. "I was the last to remember leaving." He held out his hand and it a torn fragment of a photograph. Two boys, a road behind them. One face scratched out. The other, Marcel. "I tried forgetting you," Elijah said. "But the town wouldn't let me." Marcel took the photo. His fingers burned where they touched the edge. "What is this place?" he asked. Elijah stared ahead. "It's a landfill of memory, a place where forgotten things reorganize." "Why me?" "Because you're an anchor. You didn't forget fast enough. And the town hates loose ends." Marcel looked down at his hand. The road carved in his palm had faded, replaced by a symbol, a circle split in half. "You can still leave," Elijah said. "But you have to unmake what you've drawn. How you destroy your memory of Uncel. Every piece of it. Every map. Every name. Including me." Marcel hesitated. "If I do that, you'll wake up," Elijah said. "But you'll never draw again. Not maps. It's not cities. Not even your name." Marcel stood. "I'm not ready." "Then you'll stay," Elijah said. "And the town will grow around you." He turned his back. Began walking toward the edge, where the road ended. And then he vanished. Not with a flash, not with a sound. Just gone, as if he had never existed at all. Marcel looked at the photo one last time, then let it fall. It turned to ash before it hit the ground. The next morning, he woke in his apartment in Paris. Rain tapped the windows. His computer was on. A blinking cursor waited beside a file name. Uncel_final.map. He deleted it. He burned the printouts, erased every trace, and for the first time in weeks, he slept. He dreamed of blank paper, of pens that wouldn't write, of roads that curved into nothing. He never drew again. But in a cafe 3 blocks away, a young woman sat alone. She unfolded a napkin, drew a circle, wrote 2 words beside it. Uncel, begin. And on her screen, in a folder she didn't remember creating, was a single file. Whitlock_street_initial.dwg signed M. Rivs.